Welcome to the Giants Nation show presented by you, the people. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, the Football Grump, and it's the second most important episode of the year. It's the Giants 2025 draft recap. We go from Abdul Carter and Jaxson Carter in the first round all the way to Thomas Fidone and Korie Black in the seventh round. Grump, we streamed this whole draft. We got draft breakdowns coming down. We recapped the first round. We've looked at all these players, at their film, their numbers. Giants got what I believe is 1-1 in this class in Abdul Carter. They got what Brian Daboll believes to be his franchise quarterback. And honestly, guys that I didn't think would be there at their next three picks in Darius Alexander, Cam Skattebo, and Mbow. They got an athletic tight end in Thomas Fidone and a really athletic corner and Korie Black out of Oklahoma State, which pre-show you had a take on him. I'm so excited to talk through that take. Grump, how are we feeling about the Giants 2025 draft class?
I'm feeling pretty comfortable. The Giants had to make some sacrifices in this draft, and that's sort of what I've had to come to grips with, right? They made their decision to move up to get their quarterback, which, to me was a better decision than taking your quarterback at 3, considering Abdul Carter was on the board. So they made a good decision. I wouldn't say like maybe the best. I don't know. We'll find out. It all depends on if Jaxson Dart pans out. But with that, I mean, I'm happy with everything. They had a lot of bases to cover. One place I really felt that they needed to come away with was strong O-line, and they didn't get a chance to hit the O-line until the 5th round, which, again, we didn't expect Mbow to be there in the 5th round. But at the same time, that trade up to back into the 1st round made them miss out on a lot of offensive line talent.
Yeah, and in reality, they lost pick 99, and then, 34 became the 25th pick in the draft. Again, they got a first-round QB, man. I feel like it's almost gotten forgotten, I guess, because we get so, entrenched in day 2 and day 3 of the draft ourselves. But, this is something, as a content creator, I've been waiting for a while, right? Because 2019, the first year was Daniel Jones, and it's man, first round QB is it's a huge thing, right? Since I've been watching football, the Giants, this is only the 3rd time that they've done it with Eli, Daniel Jones, and now Jaxson Dart. They got a first round QB and then 3 trench picks in their first 5 picks of the draft. Hopefully, they've created a strength in that front 4. We're going to break down Jaxson Dart specifically, the trade, everything about it. When we get to him, we're actually going to go chronologically instead of on Friday where we went Dart, then Carter. But again, man, let's talk big picture roster wise before, because we're going to talk quarterback a ton. I really hope this pass rush and this defense should be good. I'm just this talent wise, this defense should be good. Abdul Carter should be good from day 1. Then you add him to the mix of Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, and it should be limitless the things you're able to do with those guys. You have Dexter Lawrence. You got 2 solid linebackers in Bobby Okereke and Mike McFadden. You paid 2 big money players in the secondary. You had Tyler Nubin as a 2nd round pick. Drew Phillips as a 3rd round pick. Deonte Banks goes back to corner 2. And you've got depth up front at least, right? You got 3 edge rushers. Darius Alexander, I think, probably will start from day 1. If not, he's going to be in the mix. But I don't want to put too I have expectations on him of him drastically improving the room, even though as a pass rusher, it is a drastic improvement. And then, you add Marcus Mbow to be back. There's no excuse for this Giants team to not have a real deal defense this year. There's way too much talent on it with what they've added in the draft, free agency, and the talent they already had. And guys like Dex, Brian Burns, and, Okereke.
Well, I think overall, the Giants had a draft, I think, that made the most sense. This is what I would have done overall. It stinks that there were some sacrifices made, but everything makes the most sense. Even if not that it was very likely, but even if Jacksonville traded up for someone other than Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, I'm still taking Abdul Carter. To me, I look at last year's defense, and obviously the back end needed some work, but the pass rush was actually functioning fairly well to start off the season, leading the league in sacks. Make a strength to strength when you have somebody like Abdul Carter there, is actually the way I would have went anyway.
Yeah, identity has been a word that's been used a ton this weekend, but I think it's with good reason, right? It's not just something that we're because every fan base talks themselves into every draft and what it does for their team. But I do think like we come away from this one like, all right, we have a legitimate identity as a pass rush, like a legitimate identity. And with the investments in the secondary, they should be good enough to let that pass rush really, like, legitimately, like, I don't know what their offense is going to look like fully, but at least it should be a win you games type of defense.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, so they've used free agency to solidify the secondary, but they've now supplemented their strength in the defensive line and in the front four with youth in the draft, which I think is the wise move here. Rather than inject the youth into the weakness of the defensive secondary, just solidify that with free agency, get some veterans in there right now. And that's sort of what happened with the defensive line. It's just a year later, right? Like, they extend Dexter Lawrence, they bring in Brian Burns, so you have the veterans there. You draft Kayvon Thibodeau, you draft Abdul Carter, you draft Darius Alexander. So you build the strength up and then inject it with talent, I think is kind of the way to go. And like I said, like they were in a functional league leading pass rush to start the year last year. This should be a legitimate strength now, with the back end being able to hold up even stronger.
Yeah, and again, I want to get into like just the players individually here in a second, but like I also think they did a good job just like with the way the board fell to them. You know, I use jacklich.com instead of mock draftables for consensus board, because I think mock draftables is more of like, it has so much data that it has people going off of other people's data, and it actually becomes a little more groupthink of just big boards of like players, not like where they're going to be mocked, right? Like you know, the consensus big board would have like Shador like top 10, when in reality most people had him in like their 20s at best. So, and they only 16 actual big boards. So Abdul Carter was number 2. He was picked at 3. He's number 1 for me. Jaxson Dart was 51. He was picked at 25. Obviously, quarterback's a little different story. Darius Alexander was actually 66, and they picked him at 65. Cam Skattebo, 86, picked at 105. Marcus Mbow was 64, picked at 154. A 90 pick jump there. Thomas Fidone, the tight end from Nebraska, was 184, picked at 219. Korie Black was like in the 400s, but he was only on 2 people's big boards, so take that with a grain of salt. I saw most analysts kind of had him as like that 5th to 7th rounder. So I just think they did well with how the board played. So, but let's get into Abdul Carter. But first, I want to say this at the top of the show. Please subscribe and like and subscribe, and tell your friends. This is the show to get your Giants draft recap. Everybody wants to hear a draft recap. Tell your friends that this is it, especially on YouTube. Let it play to the end. Like, this is actually a show where I actually care about the algorithm, right? I kind of hate the word algorithm, and anytime someone talks to me about it, but this is a show I actually care about that. So please subscribe, like, tell your friends. We're going to be with you all summer, right? And we're not going to hit the same talking points over and over again. We're actually going to try and do different things. We do a way too early draft preview. We do a way too early free agency preview. We do a 53-man roster episode in a few weeks. So please subscribe, like. It's easy. And tell your friend that's a Giants fan that this is your place for the Giants draft recap. But, Grump, the Giants drafted edge Abdul Carter with the 3rd overall pick. Obviously, I'm jazzed up about this. You know, once it was confirmed essentially that the Titans were going to take Cam Ward, who was the only quarterback that I wanted at pick 3 in this draft, it became really Abdul Carter or bust for me. Now, I like Travis Hunter, and if they took Travis Hunter, I would have been very happy. He was my number 2 player in the class. But I actually did really want Carter more than Travis Hunter. You know, it's his first, you know, you talk about Travis Hunter and him being a freak, because he is. He plays both ways. It's unbelievable. But I also think it's pretty crazy for a guy to play one position year at edge and look the way Abdul Carter did. I mean, again, his first year at the position, and it was just straight domination. 12 sacks, 24 tackles for a loss. And it's just, you watch him and it's just freaky, man. Like, he wins around the edge. He is so sudden. He's explosive off the ball. The way he bends is just, it's unmatched. And when you do that, that's the way to win in the NFL. Win around the corner. That's how you win. And guess what happens when you win around the corner? It sets up everything else, because tackles are worried about the corner. It sets up for the lateral moves, and guess what? He does those just as good as anybody. He's got the closing speed on the QB and ball carrier just out of this world. You can line him up all over the place. I was in full bloom love with Abdul Carter from this draft process, Grump, from watching him casually to doing a full film breakdown on him. There was never a moment where I had any doubts about Abdul Carter.
No, I mean this is the pick that I would have made, right? This should be very exciting for Giants fans for years to come. So I mean we've seen like better edge rushers come out in the draft, more polished ones, stuff like that. But this is a freak athlete with a high motor and high IQ, high work ethic, and just freakish tools to work with. So the ceiling is super duper high, and it looks like the motivation is just as high as well.
He legitimately loves the game. You can tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And what he's going to be able to do, even with kind of just learning the position or being very new to the position, because there's already there's a built-in jump in learning the position, right, from the college game up to the NFL game, and besides just the competition and all the nuances that you have to learn. But he's just new to it in general, right? So he's got a lot to learn. But even with that, I think what you inject immediately into the defense is like straight up rotation. I mean, it allows you to do different things with Kayvon, who has some stand up, has some drop back into coverage ability. It allows for a lot of deceit on the front, a lot of stunts and games. You can move Abdul Carter inside, move him up, like lined up over the center, or kind of like in the A gap. You can sub out other people, give Brian Burns some rest on the side, allow him to really be the guy that he is with his speed around the edge and the bend. I think that it makes the pass rush ferocious right away, and the ceiling's high with him. Like there's plenty of room for him to grow already. So this is an excellent pick for the Giants.
Yeah, again, like I want to like go through the notes I have on the report too, because like freaky athlete who transitioned from stack to edge in 2024. Like you mentioned, freak athlete. That's the first two words I have in my write up on him. Speed and explosiveness is great and sets up everything for him. Lateral quickness is unmatched and makes plays for him. Great bend and dip, but can lose balance at times. Ability to transition creates nightmares. Suddenness to slow play and go messes with offensive linemen's pass sets. Will slow play at the top of the rush to freeze offensive linemen and then win the corner. Great ability to string moves together. He works a ton. He has a swath to spin, goes, hezzy, rip. Doesn't have great play strength once connected with the offensive lineman. Needs to add more power to his game. Disruptor in the run game overall. Will pull overzealous run blockers to shed. Great instincts taking on move blockers. Will get moved off the spot on doubles and doesn't squeeze O-line down. Gives you stand-up A-B gap, snaps his rusher, spy, and coverage. Had him as an A+. And I kind of wanted to do pro comps for this year, and I'm like, you know what? That's hard to do for every player. But I did put one for him. It is Micah Parsons. Like, it is legitimately, it's not because he went to Penn State and wore number 11. If he went to Bowling Green and wore number 23, I'm like, man, this reminds me of Micah Parsons, the way he just moves, right? That's what set Micah Parsons apart when you watch this film at Penn State, because I remember doing my Micah Parsons film breakdown that year, Grump, and he played linebacker. He didn't play edge. And I didn't think he was even going to move to pass edge in the NFL. I put 0 coverage snaps in that film breakdown, Grump, because I was like, just look at the way this guy moves. This is special. This is the number 1 defensive player in this draft to me by a wide margin. And again, Carter just won. He had a 22.6% pass rush win rate. That's higher than both guys like Kayvon and Birds coming out of college. And again, like you said, he's new to the position. I really think he has so much room to grow as well. He's bigger than Parsons coming out. The power is, and the strength is something that's going to be talked about with Abdul Carter. And I do think it will be an issue for him in the run game. Not forever, but for, at least the early part of his career, right? When you put a tackle and a tight end on him, they're going to work him. And there's going to be reps of him losing straight up to tackles in the run game. But if you leave him one-on-one in the run game, he wins consistently. He's a disruptor. But the area where I want to see the most growth, Grump, is not he needs to get bigger and stronger, obviously. But where he can is you are so fast. You mess with tackles' heads so much. You can beat them. You have a 2-way go. Make yourself a 3-way go player. And you don't need to be benching 700 pounds to do that. You have the speed, you have the quickness, and you have the IQ to see when a tackle's on his heels worried about your speed and put hands on him and drive through his chest. You don't need to be the strongest guy to catch a tackle by surprise when they're playing that way. That's where I want to see Abdul Carter make the most growth from, rookie year to beginning of year 3. That's where I want to see him make the most growth as a player.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that, right? I mean, and you had even mentioned like obviously he needs to get bigger and stronger. But it's like there's even just simple things. There's just going to like an NFL diet and an NFL like I mean that's going to come naturally anyway. And his work ethic, I think all of those nuances to the position and playing the long game, you know what I mean, with speed, just consistently beating guys around the edge, get them overthinking, move back to the inside, stuff like that. Those kinds of tips and nuances I think can develop him very well over time. This is and also that in the run game and stuff like what you're saying with like the strength and head up and all that other stuff, like head on, he's going to struggle. But like there's still the splash plays in the run game as well, where his quickness wins. 24 tackles for a loss. All right.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, 24 tackles for like he will be a disruptor, right? Like you have like a guy like TJ Watt, where people when they compare him versus Myles Garrett, right? Because Steelers fans love to do that with Browns fans. Now Myles Garrett's the better player, but like something they'll cite is like, well, the way Garrett sets the edge and plays the run game, which is true. That's why Garrett's better than TJ Watt. But TJ Watt knows what he knows what he is, and he plays to it, right? He works outside in the run game. He takes chances, and that's what Carter is going to do too. Like you got to let him take chances because, yeah, is there going to be a 2nd and 4 or a 3rd and 2 where they double team and they move him off the edge and the running back cuts off the inside of the tackle and gets a first down? Yes. But you know what there's also going to be? There's going to be a 1st and 10 where they run weak zone at him and he makes that tackle miss, and now we got 2nd and 13. Or there's going to be a 2nd and 8 where they pull at him, they want to run power, and he's going to be looking like he's going to take the outside of that guard, and he's going to quickly transition inside, and he's going to tackle that running back in the backfield and create a 3rd and 11. And then you get to see him and Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence do stuff, right? There's so many different things as pass rushers. I don't want to rehash the whole Friday podcast, Crump, but like I just been thinking in my head, just like, all right, there's an offensive line. It's 3rd down and 8. Dexter Lawrence in one A gap, Abdul Carter in the other A gap, Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau in wide alignments, Bobby Okereke walked up in a B gap, and Chauncey Golson has a 3 technique. Block that. Set a protection and try and figure out where everybody's going. You can't do it. You just can't. There's limitless things you can do on 3rd downs with these guys. And again, when you're not on 3rd down, you can throw them at stack linebacker for a play or two. That's not where my priority would be, but that's something you can do. And it's not just like getting all 3 of these guys on the field at the same time, Grump. It's like you said, these guys playing 70% one, 72% other, Kayvon playing 59%. That is the best for them, man. Pass rush edge it's part effort position. And when you're having to play 85%, 82% of the snaps for an entire season, you don't have full effort on every single play. It's just not possible. Now you do get to call that from guys. Rotation is so important, especially this Giants team is not that, but hopefully it does get to that with a Jaxson Dart where you are a Super Bowl contender, and when you can just throw guys at a team, that's where it makes the difference. So I think you can tell in my voice, dude, I'm just like jazzed up about Abdul Carter at pick 3. Was who I identified in January as the guy I wanted, never moved off of it, and now he's a New York Giant. And he's insane. He asked Lawrence Taylor for number 56.
Which was quickly shut down.
Which it should be. But like,
100%.
I love the, like, you have to be so confident to think that that's like a realistic ask. Like, oh, well, Malik Neighbors got number 1. I can definitely get the best defensive player of all time's number. Like, to me and you, that's ludicrous. To someone who's like as talented and confident as Abdul Carter, it's like, oh, yeah, well, why not ask Lawrence Taylor if I can have number 56?
I would have just asked because maybe he could use a couple bucks.
Well, he didn't even ask Phil Simms for 11, right? That would have been like a more realistic ask. Just went straight for the 56. I'm kind of rooting for 55. I feel like that's, a nice double number. What number do you want Abdul Carter before we get to Jaxson Dart, who I'm hoping takes number 2 from Deontay Banks, who should have never been given number 2 in the first place? Anyway,
what number do I want for Jaxson Dart?
You can do both.
I don't really know. But I kind of feel like 98 fits for Abdul Carter in a weird way.
I like 55. I think 53 could also work. 58 is what I want, but I don't think Okereke is giving that up.
I mean, I know he's not going to do it, but for some reason, I don't know. Maybe because
Hey, Abdul Carter, if you get number 58, just know you'll make a little bit of that money back from me. I will buy an Abdul Carter jersey if he wears number 58.
What about Jaxson Dart? I mean, I don't really ever really care about this stuff. So
Well, it's very important, so you need to care. I hope he gets number 2. I don't know why they gave Deonte Banks number 2, knowing what they thought of these quarterbacks. But Grump. The Giants traded for Jaxson Dart in the first round. They took him 25th overall. They traded pick 34 in the second round, pick 99, the comp pick, and then a future third round pick. Grump, we did a full breakdown on Friday, right? So we spent over 30 minutes on Jaxson Dart. This episode, this episode's about 7 picks, not just 2. Now, at the same time, this is a first-round quarterback. This does not happen often. I hope we don't have to do a reaction to a draft of a first-round quarterback for 12 years or so. So we do have to spend, more time on it than the other picks. But I want to do this. He's not going to play year 1, or at least not much, hopefully. But I want to go through 5 bullet points to describe the Dart pick, situation, him as a player, and we could kind of just talk off of that. So here are my 5 bullet points. Talented, good arm talent, and running ability, right? Like, if you want to just talk about, like, talent level, I think he's like a Dak Prescott talent level, which is really good. Hopefully he doesn't have the playoff chokes if he becomes a Dak level player. Because Dak without the playoff chokes is a Super Bowl quarterback. He's very aggressive, 22% deep throw rate, predetermined reads, good and bad, anticipation, and also terrible plays. It comes with the Kiffin offense. Worrisome end-of-game decisions, and then his situation on the Giants roster with current regime. I mean, I guess we should just kind of go through his talent level and what we think of him as a player, Grump. I mean, again, I think his arm talent is good. And he throws a very aesthetically pleasing ball. Like, it's a pretty ball when it hits. Now, I think he needs to clean up his footwork because I think he misses on the deep throws more than people realize, but he just throws so many that he has beautiful highlights throwing the ball down the field. And he's got the arm to do it. It's just sometimes these balls like putter out at 50 yards or so. I think his accuracy is pretty damn good. He has routine misses like other guys, or when pressure will affect him, but it's not like, I actually think he's more accurate than Cam Ward in this class, who, I wanted at pick 3 for the Giants if he was available. And then other talent wise, like, he's a good runner, right? He's not the super elusive guy, but he gets what's there and a bit more. And you can, my barrier for, like, how good of a runner you are, because people will try and say, like, oh, this guy's a sneaky good runner, is, will I use you in zone read? And Jaxson Dart is absolutely a quarterback I would use in zone read.
Well, him the player, yeah, I like him the player. I think he makes the most sense for Brian Daboll and for this offense. I think his arm talent is good. It's NFL good. It's not elite. It's not above. It's good. And I see what you say with the puttering out down the field a little bit, but I do think that he's not going to be able to push the ball much further downfield than what he already can. But I think he can clean some of that up with some of his mechanics. His mechanics are mostly good, but I think the lower body stuff can get a little lazy or unrefined. The follow through stuff sometimes I think is affecting deep throws, but he does throw a lot of deep balls, and it's part of the thing that you like about him. He's aggressive with the football. He knows where those matchups are, and when he sees them, he takes advantage of them. He wants to do that, and when he does, he has very good ball placement to put things in a place for his playmakers to make a play, right? And that's always kind of his motive, is to put things in play for his playmakers to make a play. And that's one of the things you like the most about him, is that level of aggression and also maximizing the talent around him. Like, it's not on him to always be throwing into tight windows. It's, sometimes he's comfortable potentially overthrowing someone deep if it means that it'll throw them open.
Yeah, no, I do see underthrows at time, and I'll talk about that. But the arm talent with the aggression, I think, is where I want to talk about it next. Like I said, 22% deep throw rate. My favorite thing, when we talked about him on our quarterback preview, Grump, was this. It wasn't just throwing the ball deep 22% of the time. Like, the Kiffin offense will ask for that. But what I liked the most was his willingness to be aggressive on the intermediate throws, right? And not just, oh, he throws the ball over the middle. No, he throws with legit anticipation. Like receivers getting into his break, he throws it, right? Receiver on a corner, flag route, in the middle of two zone defenders, he throws that. He takes the high and a high-low. You know, they run that deep post concept, again, for better or worse at times. He wants to throw that deep post. So if that safety's even hesitating a little bit to maybe take a route, a different route, he's going to throw that ball. He'll look to split the safeties consistently. Right, so we know that's important for Brian Daboll because the Ole Miss offense doesn't run. It's not an NFL offense, and obviously a lot of colleges aren't. But the Ole Miss, I think, is that, and like Tennessee, they're the offenses that I think are the furthest away from an NFL offense. But the NFL concepts they do run, Grump, they are concepts that Brian Daboll likes. And they're the most aggressive ones. They're the ones that they took off the playbook with Daniel Jones, and then you saw him put back on the playbook with Tyrod Taylor in 2023. It's the ones you saw him put on the plate for Drew Lock, and then saw him throw terrible pass after terrible pass, and then took away from him. Now with that, the quick game, which is a big part of the Brian Daboll offense, that's like one, it's not there, and he just doesn't trust the spacing. That's something that he's gonna have to learn in this year where he sits. But again, the thing I like the most is just the aggression on intermediate throws and throwing receivers the ball out of their breaks and pass, through windows over the middle of the field, which again, we talk about a lot of these quarterbacks and they have their stats and they just flat out don't do that. Cam Ward does that. Shedeur Sanders didn't do that. In last year's class, there was guys that didn't do that. Jaxson Dart is somebody that does that.
Yeah, like you said, he's aggressive downfield. He's also aggressive over the middle. He takes those slants, hits guys right out of their break. Excellent anticipation. There's also good zip on all those balls, right? Like he really drives those suckers right in there. So he'll also do some like odd angle throws. He's not like the greatest at it, but it's just every play is he's 100% committed to what he's doing. If for better or for worse, right? Like so some of the aggressive decision making that choked at the end of games. Florida is like a really especially bad one. Those feel a little bit like desperation creeping into that aggression, right? And I think because those bad decisions only really seem to happen at the end of games. Like the decision making isn't perfect. I'm not trying to say that, but like the true meltdown decisions, they happen in crunch time, and it's that desperation and aggression barrier that he's going to have to work on.
Well, let's talk about this third bullet point where I have predetermined reads, good and bad. So a lot of times in that Ole Miss offense, if you got the talent, you can make that offense look really good in Jaxson Dart because it tells you where to go a lot of times, and it's going to be not going with a choice route for 5 yards. It's going to be going for a post or a dig. And when it's the first 3 quarters, Grump, Jaxson Dart was very much first read, and a lot of times it's there. But when it wasn't there, it's like, let me find my running back for the check down, right? And if that wasn't there, then run. It was first read, running back, run. That seemed to be his plan. Well, in the fourth quarter, you can't do that because you need to make actual passes. And he said it even on the Gruden QB school, it's a lot of predetermined reads in these aggressive concepts. And that is my biggest worry. And it peaks into the the end of game, worrisome end of game decision with my fourth bullet point. Then we'll finish off with the situation on the Giants roster. It's simply like, is this a guy who is just doing what offense that is extremely QB friendly in college is doing him? And now that you see why Brian Daboll wants him, it's because of that. Because like, all right, well, I got this guy who's aggressive and I can mold him, right? I can teach him to get to those second and third reads and actually read the safety and not just throw the aggressive throw. And again, I think that's why him being able to sit on the Giants is a really good spot for him, and a coach who, helped, groom a quarterback like Josh Allen, who maybe had some mistakes. Now, it's not Josh Allen's talent level, but like a coach who's groomed that. But the predetermined reads thing, that's where I get to the worrisome end of games, because it's like that's where I want to see you be above the Ole Miss system, and that's where he went his worst. Like you mentioned, the Florida game, and I'll repeat myself from the Friday pod, but I went back through those games. I did a film breakdown. At the end of the Florida game, rolling out, overthrow against double coverage, then an interception into triple coverage. And there's that Florida game, they threw a touchdown, probably his best touchdown pass. They ran the same play. The Gators saw it this time. He threw it in the triple coverage there. Then he threw another play into a quadruple coverage that wasn't completed. Then there was a miscommunication interception on a conversion route versus cover 2, which was called back due to some penalty. Then an interception where I don't know what he was trying to do, but he just popped the ball up and it just right into a safety's hand. In the Florida game, it's like, well, it's just one game. Well, the LSU game, beginning the fourth quarter, they're up by 4. He throws an interception into double coverage, right? Bad decision and underthrow. Then they get to overtime. He underthrows a ball into double coverage that the safety gets his hand on. Then the next play, ball under pressure, he overthrows, drops interception. Then the Kentucky game. Again, these are their 3 losses. Has this crazy play on 4th and 11 after a missed dig. And then 34-yard line they're at. He misses a deep throw. That happens, right? They're not going to be mad at that. Then he rolls out and takes a sack and moves them out of field goal range. The next play, he scrambles and fumbles the ball. It gets overcalled because of a penalty. And then they miss a long field goal to tie the game up, and they lose to Kentucky. So that is my worry. That was my worry pre-draft with Jaxson Dart, and that's still my worry. And we'll get into the talk about him sitting, and hopefully that is what takes away some of those things, Grump. But that Lane Kiffin offense, you got to really read between the lines with a player. And I think looking at that end of fourth quarter stuff is worthy of looking at.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, I think the 2 things that he's really going to have to worry about, obviously he's going to have to learn to read field a little bit better, and it's only going to get more complicated. There's going to be more complicated defense, more complicated reads from a more complicated offense. Like, all of it is going to go up. Like, this is algebra 1 to trigonometry or something here. Not a math major. Don't really know if those 2 things are related. But the other thing is he's going to have to learn to develop some patience when the reads aren't there. Like, he is good in the pocket. He has good pocket movement. He has good pocket timing, and he is fearless in there. Like, when he sees something developing, he will stand, deliver, and take shots. He's not afraid of any of that stuff.
There's no fear, and he's not someone who plays afraid at all.
Yeah. But at the same time, he needs to work on his patience and let the play develop and let the reads develop, and also operate a little bit better off script. Like you said, he kind of goes through a checklist in his mind and then he takes off, even if taking off isn't really a good option. The eyes drop right down to the line of scrimmage, and that's where he's going to have to work on those 2 things.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, again, there's like the footwork, I think if the ball can putter out of 50 yards and, I didn't pull up these notes, so I don't have them right in front of me. But on the Friday pod, I talked about, like, he throws the deep ball more than anybody in the class. He also threw turnover-worthy plays on the deep pass more than anybody in the class. He also had, one of the lower completion percentages on the deep pass. Now he has more volume, so both the completion percentage is understandably lower, but it's not understandable that the turnover-worthy play rate is higher, because the more you throw it, the more that those bad plays should water it down a little bit. But let's talk about him within the situation. My 5th bullet point, his situation on the Giants. I'm sure there's like so many teams, they draft a quarterback, coaches, fan bases, whoever, and they're like, just let him sit, right? This is a good player. We need to let him sit. And they get the week 8, and the fan base is like, play him. And volatile GMs and head coaches, which I don't think Brian Daboll and Joe Shane aren't, by the way, with some of their past QB decisions, like, starting DeVito over Tyrod or the DeVito lock thing, is incapable of. But because the Giants not only signed Russ, but Jameis, I actually have hope that he doesn't play a lot this year. And if the season's going to go really bad, I don't want to not see him for the whole 17-game season. I would love a 4-game stretch at the end of the season to learn and grow from, right? Because even if those 4 games go terrible, Grump, it's only it shouldn't ruin his confidence going into the season. If he had a 13-game rookie season and it goes terrible, that can destroy a young quarterback's confidence. A 4-game stretch should not, no matter how bad it goes. But you have Russell Wilson, who, again, I would be shocked if he didn't play a minimum of 9 games. And then you have Jameis to give you a buffer and go to him for like 4 games. Again, this is like worst case scenario for the season. And they're just panicking because the fan base is calling for Russ. And we know that they can, be reactionary in some of those decisions. They have an ownership who, wants to make a quarterback change or whatever. But like, I actually think he can sit and learn. Like he's going to, like Brian Daboll already said it, he's going to be a 3rd string in training camp. So he's not going to be part of the game plan a ton week to week, right? He's gonna be the emergency quarterback for most of the season. He's gonna be on scout team, and I hope they find somebody on that staff who is truly working with him and growing him as a quarterback, and not simply just making the throws that the cards say on the scout team.
Yeah, it's the ideal situation for this draft class, I think, right? I would amend your thing to saying up to 4-game stretch at the end of the season. I would be perfectly comfortable with just one if the season is lost or if they're heading into the playoffs. You know what I mean? Obviously, you're not doing that, but I would say 1 game up to 4. I don't think I want to see any more than 4. And I do think that it would be good for him. This is the perfect situation for this. This is actually where I think they've had a very good off season with their planning, and they knew what this draft class was. I think that they had a pretty good idea that they wanted Jaxson Dart for quite a while now. I don't buy they came to a full consensus on Monday. I think they might have maybe finished their points, but I think Brian Daboll was probably pretty set for.
I think Daboll was. I think I'm not think there was other people who didn't want that.
Right, of course, but but even so, if that wasn't the case, I think they had similar grades on probably Shedeur Sanders, which would have been the same situation where it's another guy that I don't think should be starting right off the bat. So they did the correct thing in the offseason by getting a starter and a bona fide backup, bona fide starter and a bona fide backup to get through this season and let him learn behind them.
Well,
and it's because of the prospect he is, right? You know what I mean? Like if there was a prospect, another prospect that they could go for, I think they would have taken them at 3.
Yeah, and I want to say credit to Todd McShay on this because I'm finally happy that somebody within the draft community or whatever has information and actually shares it, because too much becomes all the people just share with the other insiders and they say vague things and are afraid to say it. With the Shedeur stuff, because me and you weren't like we and you didn't like Shedeur's film, so we didn't watch Shedeur Sanders for that reason. But his film wasn't so terrible where you're like, this guy can never work in the NFL. Like I think as just a player, he has a skill set to last. He's accurate, he's tough, and he has confidence. Like those don't last as a long. He's a great starter, but like lasts in the NFL. McShay said flat out that ahead of their 30 visit or whatever it was, that Daboll gave Shedeur an install package of plays and said, when we meet, like, let's talk about it. And Daboll thought he was unprepared when they had their meeting. And basically, Shedeur was like, didn't react well to that. That's crazy, right? And if I was the head coach too, and if that happened to me, and as a quarterback I was borderline on, again, because the quarterback is so much about the person and mental, they'd be completely off. Like, sorry. Not happening. Like this is the biggest job interview. This is where guys who don't work hard and aren't work harders fake it, right? You know how many quarterbacks are probably not that hard of workers and don't take this stuff seriously, but for January to April before their draft, they know how to fake it really well. So if you're not even faking it, like I didn't want Shedeur in the first place wise, and then the whole conversation of trading up and stuff. But let's go into that. What do you think of the package of pick 34, 99, and a future 3rd round pick?
I don't think that it's much to give up at all. I mean, right now you are making a statement that you are molding this guy to be the franchise quarterback. I mean, that is a statement that you are making. That is the intention right here. The way they set it up, what they thought, you know what I mean? Like if they, I don't know. So when you do that, you really look at that, the cost is a 3rd and a future 3rd to get that.
Well, he has to be good. That's the thing. Is if he's good or even like an above average quarterback, we don't look back at that. If he's bad, then obviously, then we're like, damn you, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, you traded away.
Well, I mean,
fill in the blank. What fill in the blank player that goes between 34 and 40 that ends up being really good.
If he's bad, he's bad because it's a bad pick. You can criticize the pick if you want, but the move to get it is a no-brainer. You know what I mean? Like it's such a low cost for what you're swinging for at that point. A 3rd this year when you have 2 of them, it's the later 3rd that's basically a 4th round pick. They're picking 6 picks later from the pick that you give up in the 3rd round, and then a 3rd next year for a guy that you are hoping after a full year of the guy that your head coach wants. That's the guy. To me, it's a no-brainer. And if it doesn't, if
Well, no, I think
it's not going to set your franchise back forever because you gave up basically a 4th rounder and next year's 3rd. That's where I kind of look at it. Like,
well,
the trade
it's a
doesn't set you back
no-brainer.
at all.
It's no brainer based on your evaluation, right? Like it's, like we have.
Well, isn't every draft trade? You know what I mean? If the pick ends up sucking, like, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
My question will always be
around day 3 thing that you're like, oh, I gave up something because I thought this 7th round pick, I moved up 6 spots and whatever. Like, obviously that's something else, but anything in the premium spots.
Okay, this is where I'll change it because I think this conversation has to happen with this pick. Is we can't pretend that Joe Shane and Brian Dable are in year 1 of their regime. Like things they do, you do have to have questions about it, right? They didn't pick a quarterback for 3 years. So this is their 4th year. They know they are on the hot seat, and they could not go through this class and say, we didn't take anybody, right? We're not talking about a guy they took at 3 and really put their stamp on, we want this guy. It's a guy, like you said, they traded up for. They didn't give up a lot for him. So if it doesn't work out, I will always wonder, how much did they actually like him? If it does work out, I'm going to say, hey, this is awesome. It's the most fun thing to have as an NFL team, as a franchise QB. Like as much as I, don't love Dart's evaluation, I'm so excited to spend this whole offseason breaking down his game and going each individual game and going through, I don't even want to say certain things because I know people like to, take stuff. But like I'm excited about that, about this opportunity. But again, I wouldn't say it's a no-brainer because I think it feels there's like we're not talking about a team that was picking at 18 and felt like they had the need to get to 14 for their quarterback.
No, but I
We're
understand.
talking about a team that was picking number 3, and like, what if the Saints took them at 9? Then what are they doing?
Well, I don't think part of this that I think maybe you and I disagree is I don't think that they were in a position where they needed to take a quarterback this year. I don't think that they feel the same way about Jaxson Dart as they do Jaden Daniels last year.
But what I'm saying is, what if the Saints took them at pick 9?
Then they make that's what I'm saying to you. I don't know if they even trade in and get anybody. I don't think that they needed to get a quarterback this year. I think they wanted to very badly, and I think that they liked Jaxson Dart enough to do so. But I don't think that they were. I think they spent their offseason in a way where ideally they would get the guy they wanted in this draft. But if they didn't, it wasn't the end of the world. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
in that case,
it's
you
definitely
end up doing the thing you wanted for a 3rd round pick this year. That's basically a 4th and a 3rd next year. I think it's so close to a no brainer. I mean, there's no brainer.
Just be good, Jaxson Dart. It's as simple as that.
Of course, yeah.
I'm literally praying at night that you are good because it makes all of our as fans as Giants fans the best. To have a young, good quarterback, it's the best feeling in the world. Even just give us some hope. What's also a no brainer? Going to a Sussex County Miners baseball game this summer. Their opening night is May 8th. So if you guys have been paying attention this whole draft weekend, they have been legitimate supporters for us. And you may just be finding this show and you're like, oh, this is a good draft recap. I told you to share it with your friends. This show is brand new, right? This show started on April 1st, and people thought it was an April Fool's joke. But you know who did it? The Sussex County Miners, because their GM, Vincent Sangemino, and their owner, Mike Dorso, they're both lifelong Giants fans. And they said, hey, man, Bobby Skinner, that's your name, right? Your email. We want to help you. We want to support you in this time of transition because they're in their 10-year anniversary, and they are a legit fun baseball experience. And it's not just a baseball game. It's an experience. They have affordable pricing, in-game entertainment, fireworks, theme nights, and a family-first vibe. Half the price of an MLB game, and honestly, maybe even more fun. Actually, you know what? It is more fun. Minor league baseball games are more fun than Major League Baseball games. That's a fact, Jack. So you can check them out at SussexCountyMiners.com. They have so many promotions. This isn't the last time they will be on this show. I'll be at one of their games. They're going to be doing some stuff with us over the summer. Thank you to them. They have made this weekend fun. And they've made it to where, we can, take care of Grump and Danny King and make them excited to be part of the Giants Nation show and you guys. So go support the Sussex County Miners. They have a fan out of me for life. Like they're always, when people ask my favorite baseball team, I won't say the Yankees. I'm going to say the Sussex County Miners.
Go Miners.
You'll be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did. All right, Grub, let's talk about the meat and tomatoes. And you say, oh, it's meat and potatoes. No, it's not. It's the meat and it's the tomatoes. This is the fun part of this draft recap. The Giants, and we're going to go through all of these picks. The Giants took in round 3, pick 65, Darius Alexander, defensive tackle out of Toledo, 6'4", 305 pounds. Grump, he's athletic, he's strong, and he's long. He was able to bully the small school competition that he played. He strikes, extends, he gets push, he finishes plays. Grump, me and you go to the Senior Bowl every year, right? It's our favorite place in the world is going down to Mobile, Alabama, watching players, working all day, and then going to getting some Mexican food afterwards. And one of the things we love about the Senior Bowl is finding out about players that maybe wouldn't have been on your radar. And then what do we always do when we leave the Senior Bowl? You go home and you're like, you have your first watches. These are the guys I want to go see what their film likes because they flash and I knew nothing about them. Darius Alexander was legitimately my first watch when I got home. I put a date on my on every write-up I do. His was February 2nd, the Sunday after the Senior Bowl. People were talking about Alexander at 34, and I wasn't on board with that. But I thought he'd be gone by 65, so I thought he'd be one of those players that I liked, but was never in the range that I wanted. Well, he was there. I had the bullet point of needing to know how much he's putting in because I wish I saw more from him against smaller school competition and bigger competition. Plus, he'll be 25 when the season starts. Like he's older than Kayvon and Evan Neal. But he's just a legit talent. We'll see what we get out of him, and we'll talk about him in the run defense and stuff. But as much as he didn't get the great sack and tackle for loss production, the only defensive tackles that were drafted in this class that had more total sacks, hits, and pressures were Derek Harmon, who was a first-round pick, and Ty Robinson out of Nebraska.
Yeah, one of the things I look at with him that stands out is the 34-inch arms and the 28 bench press reps, which I think was second among defensive tackles behind Alfred from
Robbins.
Alfred
Collins.
Collins. Yeah. He's really, really quick out of his stance. The initial punch strength and following leverage that comes from it, and then the leg drive behind it is unique. You know what I mean? Like among everybody else down at the Senior Bowl, just wins consistently, and you can see what consistent good pad level with a little bit less lean can do for a guy with his size, strength, and leg drive and explosiveness. The thing that sticks out to me is that Andre Patterson. I don't remember where I heard it, but Andre Patterson said to him that he couldn't wait to get his hands on him to teach him. And that fills me up with plenty of confidence right there on all the things that need to be corrected for him to be a legitimate disruptor. And to get him in the 4th round at pick 65, third round at pick 65 is delightful.
Yeah, again, when we said at the beginning of the show, he was like one of 4 guys at that range. We're like, all right, let's take him. The Giants get him. Again, he is gifted, right? I think he's more destined for that penetrating 3 technique role, which Joe Shane even said in his press conference about him. He's going to be a possible starting 3 tech for us. And he's got the quick lateral movement, but the plays that show off the most, where I think this is what he should build upon, and I think what Andre Patterson wants to build upon, because you didn't see this consistent enough, but when you did see it, it is you get off that ball, you got strong hands, bam, pop in that shoulder pass, extend, and then work whatever moves you have. Right? I thought there was too many times where he would try and set up this quick hand move, and it's like, no, dude, just get off the ball, strike, and work off of that. You have the ability to do that. But like I said, one of my notes is you need to know how much work he's putting in because there's so much talent there. But there is questions like why at 25 years old are you getting 3.5 sacks for Toledo when you're playing against some pretty bad offensive linemen, right? There's some film I was watching him grow up where I was like, you're just so much bigger and faster and stronger than these guys. But like I said, he did have success, with the, total sacks, hits, and pressures. He was 7th in pass rush win rate for defensive tackles in this class. And again, he has real deal amazing reps. He kind of reminds me of Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin a couple years ago, who's a starting defensive tackle for the Steelers. Now Benton is, a year younger than him, despite being drafted a couple years ago. But he does remind me of that, and in the same strengths, right? I think Alexander's stronger. He has more of those strength reps, but they work laterally, they penetrate, and then in the run game, you see some really good plays. And you're again, this is where Alexander's better is he's just got strong hands that allow him to torque and just bench offensive linemen where Benton didn't do that. But there was times on double teams where he just gets stood up and gets moved, or a down block where he loses the angle and he just doesn't have the anchor to really just anchor down against that, and would get pushed out of the run play. And teams like Western Kentucky would have a 10-yard run running right off of where he's supposed to be. But he also, again, works as a penetrator in the run game. He finishes at the ball well, which is, I think, important for that role too, where you're not just someone that's two gapping. But again, so much talent. I'm not putting all these expectations on him as a rookie, right? Like Abdul Carter, come in, operate right away. Alexander, I think, is someone who, like you said, needs to work with Dre Patterson and really hone in on his game. But dude, he flashes, and again at the Senior Bowl, he was flat out dominant. And it was just easy to see how talented he was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to have a starting role this year, but I think he'll be a healthy portion of the rotation. And I think also based on game matchups, in-game matchups, and how they feel about game planning week to week, how much time he'll be integrated into the defensive rotation. I certainly think that his presence on the roster puts Nunez Roches' contract into question.
I think it should. You signed Roy Robertson Harris. You got Jeremiah Ledbetter. Chauncey Golson's going to get some rush reps on the inside. That's something I wanted, and then Shane mentioned specifically in some of his press conferences talking about the depth on the front. It would make sense to cut Rakeem Nunez Roches and get actually I should have. What's the savings on that contract, Grump?
I want to say it's $3 million, but I have to look it up really quick.
Well, I am going to look it up because I don't want to say anything wrong to the people who are listening to this for the first time, and they're like, "You idiot, dude! You're so stupid," because it would be 3.68 or 3.58. I'm not sure which one. I'm trying to do the math in my head. Spot Rack I'm going to go over to Cap. They're better. It'd be 3.6. It'd be 3.6 exactly in savings and 1.4 in dead cap. I mean, the Giants, they don't have enough money to sign their draft class. This feels like it's an automatic. In fact, if you watch the draft streams on the 7th round, I was kind of like, I really wanted the FSU kicker Ryan Fitzgerald so we could cut Graham Gano and save his contract too. But that's for the UDFA bod, Grump.
Yeah, no, but I think it speaks to his rotation in the lineup. You know what I mean? You have somebody who is probably penciled in to play ahead of him in the depth chart that is now.
He's at minimum the second defensive tackle behind Dex. At minimum.
Right. And I think that so much of his game can be cleaned up with just Andre Patterson working with his hands. It really just feels like shedding techniques are what's a little behind. Like his hands are
more consistency. He's an inconsistent player. That's why he's there in the 3rd round of this talent. Like his get off is inconsistent. His hand, like you said, his hand moves are inconsistent. He's in the run game, he's an inconsistent player.
But I think one of the most important things with players like this, you'd mentioned it and it's absolutely correct. I'm not negating it, whatever. But at 25 years old, why are you still struggling statistically at Toledo? Like, why aren't you dominating this competition? But the most important thing to me is how much better, in my opinion, he looked at the Senior Bowl than his Toledo tape looked. So you get him there with NFL coaches and immediately you see the difference. Tells me that not that it's a quick fix or anything like that, but just it is fixable, and the leap that it makes, that those fixes make, is pretty drastic.
And Shane talked about how sometimes they were asking him to read and react and stuff, and wasn't just full go. In the Senior Bowl, you're able to see more of that, like just go. Now I think that's again a question, like why at 25 years old the read and react stuff slowing you down more than it does other guys who are put in that role. Alfred Collins out of Texas, the 2nd round pick for the 49ers. He didn't have issues in that role, flashing there, and he doesn't even have any pass rush ability the way Alexander does. So do you got anything else on Darius Alexander before we talk about like probably the most beloved pick in this draft class?
No, I say we get right to it.
Let's hit day 3, baby. This is where your money is made. And round 4, pick 105, the Giants select Arizona State running back Cam Skattebo. It lives in my head, that Texas game. The announcer, I forgot his name on Saturday. What's his name again?
I don't know.
Gruden's. He didn't know on Saturday, and then I had to remember. But anyways, just Cam Skattebo. He's simply a beast, dude. Like, he just doesn't go down. Mark Reynolds said he runs like an alligator, and I feel like that's the best way to describe him. Where it's like, how are you staying up? How are you at this angle and this low? And boy, was he productive at Arizona State. He was the offense. He had the second most rushing yards in this class, only behind Ashton Genty. He was first in receiving yards. When you talk about his profile, you wouldn't think that, but he is. He was third in yards after contact, second in missed tackles forced. Now, so why is this guy who's the whole offense and all these numbers here in the fourth round, Bobby Skinner? Why? Well, he's 5'9", 219 pounds, so he's got good size, a little shorter. He's pretty much limited to inside zone and gap runs because he's not like he's a below average athlete at the running back spot. But again, he plays on fire, but he just doesn't have the speed to put him out on the corners in your run games. Like, the way to get him out in the open field, which is great because he simply just breaks tackles, and this is what Arizona State did, is to throw him swing passes, right? That's the way to get him involved in the open field. But again, he stays up. Like, the plays where he's just able to stay up and break like 4 or 5 tackles in a play. And I'm not talking about like 1, 2, 3. No, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, he's like stringing these broken tackles together. It's just, I love the idea of pairing him with like a speed back, an explosive back like Tyrone Tracy. Again, there is red flags about Skattebo. You know, again, he's a below average athlete. He doesn't have that great speed. But you know, my other bullet points are his contact balance is good, just stays up, never willing to go down, fights for every play, downhill runner, knows one speed at the start of the rep. Now, again, that comes with negatives. Lacks patience allowing linebackers to declare early. Cuts bring him too horizontal, losing downhill flow. Backside ends can get him in the backfield, and I think that's one reason he doesn't have as much tempo and patience in the backfield, because he's worried about that. But he just feels leverage well. He cuts off of it. In the open field, he sets up blocks so well, and he always breaks at least one tackle, and he consistently just wants to put a shoulder through you. I put together a package of goal line touchdowns to put together, and honestly, the most impressive one in that clip was a 4th and 2 against Texas where they didn't get it, but he broke 5 tackles, and it was just nobody on the offensive line had did their job. But he has some nice grabs down the field. He's a hit or miss blocker. It's either great or it's terrible. He throws his whole head and shoulder into it, which will lead him to lay some guys out, but it also lead to him missing. I thought he might have been there at pick 105, but I figured somebody would take him in the 3rd round, Grump. I'm sorry for talking so long about Cam Skattebo, because I know you love Cam Skattebo.
I'm trying to come up with a good nickname for him, and I'm landing on Cannonball Cam, because he does run like.
You don't even need a nickname. It's just Cam Skattebo.
I see what you're saying with like running like an alligator, just because it's like all limbs keeping him up right at all times. But for me, it just feels like a cannonball. He's built sort of like Maurice Jones-Drew, and he runs kind of similarly, although he's not the same athlete whatsoever. But he runs similarly, which is just pinballing off of people. Like, he's going to go through you mentality, and I love this. It's similar like bully mentality to him. He's super tight in the hips. He doesn't have the home run speed. He doesn't have the burst up to the line. Like, the athleticism questions are all there, but that's really not who he is. The contact balance is elite. Saw this stat floating around. Don't know how true it is, but for his 1,700 rushing yards, 1,200 of them happened after contact is insanity. And then on top of that, you have the 21 touchdowns, 605 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns off of that. So what makes him really, really good to me, where you can look past the lack of athleticism and the lack of speed and lack of burst, is that he is a 3-stage player. He's the runner. He's perfectly good as a runner. He's perfectly good in pass protection, and he's perfectly good as a receiver. And by perfectly good, I mean he's experienced well in all those areas. Everything needs to be cleaned up, obviously, college to the NFL. In pass protection, he's not making mental mistakes, I don't think. It's just mechanical mistakes. He squares up pretty good, but he tries to lay people out. He puts his head down sometimes. He's using his shoulders. He's going for the big hit instead of controlling blocks. There are going to be plays where it's going to call for him to block for much longer than just laying somebody out.
Yeah, he's got to clean up the blocking. Like, again, it's fun. I even shared a highlight of it, but like, he needs to be more consistent in that.
But I
There's-
worry so much less about someone who needs to clean up mechanical things than it is like strength things or experience things or IQ things. So you see the mental mistakes in pass blocking, or the guys who have just no experience in it whatsoever from their college film, or the guys who are just not going to survive NFL strength for a while. Those are my immediate concern. Those are guys where I'm like, I don't know how much they're going to play rookie year, because you can't even put them in a situation where they need to pass block. You can't trust them. At least you can trust him where if you can work on mechanics day one and improve things. You know what I mean? Like, that's got to get cleaned up. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's not the same as putting someone out there where there's a 50-50 chance that they're not even going to pick up the right guy and get your quarterback creamed. You know what I mean? So the cleanup on the pass blocking, it's 100% really a right. It's a note. It belongs there, but I'm not super worried about it. I think it can be cleaned up. He's a very capable back out of the backfield to catch the ball. And I think that's where it puts him in space, and that's where it puts him in the tackling mismatches, right? Like a defensive tackle, defensive ends converging on him, they'll bring him down. Where he survives is getting to the second level and getting out on the outside and making the smaller guys just incapable of bringing him down. That's where he really lives and eats. And I think that you can get situations like that for him, but he's going to have to really learn to be patient with offensive lines and get the timing right from behind the line of scrimmage to the hole. There's just way too much film of him kind of poking and prodding and going for, the bad disciplined cutback that you see so often in college that you're not going to see at the NFL. And also, like, he's not fast by college standards, but he's really not fast by NFL standards. So even if there is a cutback lane there, chances are good that whoever broke their contain will have a better athleticism and better speed to make up for it. So that's going to get played right out of his game. He's going to have to learn how to hit the hole and get the timing right behind the line of scrimmage, because there's no burst right there. And there's no patience either for shit to happen. So he just kind of bounced around back there looking for a lane. He's going to have to learn to hit the hole.
Yeah, so like I know you said overlook, and I hate to make this comparison, but you look back at I know people are gonna roll their eyes, but at a Toby Gerhart out of Stanford all those years back, right? Who actually made some money, like did fairly decent in the NFL. It wasn't the back that people thought it was gonna be, but he played decently for Minnesota and some spot opportunities as AP's backup, and then in Jacksonville. But I'm not overlooking like the things that I worry about. I'm just willing to bet on the things that he's great at, right? Like we talked about him on the draft streams and stuff, and he just came up as a player we were talking about, and I was like, man, there's things that I worry about, right? Like he doesn't have that speed. You put him out on the corner, and he's not able to win those angles, and DBs are able to make the plays on him. But he just breaks so many tackles. Again, so it's like, can he do that at the NFL level? I think there's at the minimum use for him. Will he be what we're all excited about right now against NFL linebackers and safeties who are much more polished? I don't know, but I also saw him do it against Texas, Grump, who Texas had a front four like Alfred Collins. We just talked about him in the Darius Alexander portion. He was someone I wanted so bad in the second round, or was picked 65 if he had felt. Went to the 49ers in the second round. That guy dominated Georgia, Alfred Collins. There was times where Alfred Collins dominated the Arizona State offensive line because it wasn't a good O-line, and Skattebo beat him, right? Skattebo made him miss and broke his tackle and got in there and broke tackles from a Texas safety who went in the second round, and Makuba. So I am not sitting here saying this guy is a surefire. This is going to be a pick we look back at and are so happy with. I'm just willing to bet on it because the positives I think are so high. Again, where second most rushing yards in the class in a year where you have a guy like Ashton Genty, and many other years he'd been number one. First in receiving yards, right? Where again, get him the ball in the open field. He's gonna make guys miss. Involve him in the screen game. There's things you can do, and all those missed tackles, forced, and yards after contact. I'm just willing to bet on it. And again, I understand. Like I wasn't shocked he was there in the fourth round. I thought someone in the third round would take him, but when he did fall to pick 105, it was actually him or one other guy that I wanted, and the Giants ended up getting the other guy.
So does that mean you want to move forward to fifth round pick 154 Marcus Mbow, O-lineman from Purdue.
No, you're actually wrong because
Wow.
you know what I wanted to pick 105? Grump.
Body armor.
Body armor. You're so damn smart. I knew we had you around here for some reason. Body armor. This 2025 Giants draft recap of Giants Nation show is brought to you by Body Armor Sports Drink. Rewrite your routine and choose better with Body Armor. Body Armor is real hydration with electrolytes, coconut water, and no artificial dyes, flavors, or sweeteners with great tasting flavors like strawberry banana, orange mango. If you're listening on the podcast app, I'm holding an orange mango up. Body Armor will level up your hydration game. Grab Body Armor Sports Drink today at your local grocery store. Body Armor, choose better. Grump. This is a little off script. And, Body Armor is a big company. And they're like, oh, this is the ad. We got this, approved through legal. But I'm actually going to improvise a little bit. Body Armor kept us alive this weekend. I literally did not sleep Thursday night doing the Jaxson Dart breakdown until 3 p.m. the next day. We talked so much, 17 hours of streaming. And I mean, my trash can next to my desk is just filled with Body Armor water, Body Armor juice, but or Body Armor sports drink. Thank you, Body Armor, for stepping up to the plate for us.
Yeah, I was legitimately halfway dead because, this is sort of your lifeblood, but for me, I have a 9 to 5. So going Friday night, I was kind of a zombie, and I'm not even kidding that the Body Armor kind of jazzed me up to get through the rest of the night, to the point where I couldn't really go to bed after the draft Friday night.
Yeah, Body Armor is the best. So appreciative of them. And again, they are going to be they are going to be a part of the future of this show too. All right, Grump, let's get into the best value pick of the draft. And that's Marcus Mbow from Purdue. Round 5, pick 154. This pick actually came from the Panthers in the Brian Burns trade. This came from the Seahawks in the Leonard Williams trade. Our 5th round pick went to the Panthers. Like I said, I wanted him or Skattebo at pick 105. I actually preferred Mbow. Well, guess what? The Giants said you get to have both. Mbow is someone who has an issue, and that's his lack of play strength, and that's a worry for him. And he really struggles with it, and it's hard to see a guy, and he has 32-inch arms. I know Shane said 33-inch in the press, or maybe he misspoke, but I mean, he was tested at the combine, and I go by that. And say, well, he struggled at strength at college level. You're going to slide him inside? I don't know. His best spot may be right tackle. But I'll say this is I'm willing to try him at all 5 spots or all 4 spots. Maybe he's not a left tackle, but, the guard spots, center, and tackle. Because he has the athleticism to play tackle in the NFL. His feet are extremely quick. His ability to recover, I think, hasn't been talked about because there's so many other good things. But, when a guy works inside or whatever, his ability just to slide his feet and stay with that rusher really is nice. And then as a pass blocker, not just, quick feet, he's extremely smart, right? You see him throw out different pass sets. You see him use different hand tricks to throw pass rushers off. Pass rushing is a timing game. He does a lot to throw your timing off, and that can win the battle for you a lot of the times. By seeing blitz and stunts, he sees it from a mile away. And with that lateral quickness, it's just excellent. There was a play that I posted pre-draft where they sent this long developing stunt at them. And he knows I'm not going to be able to slide over to where the guard is and get him to slide over to where the center is and get the center to pick this up. So he literally left the guard with the defensive tackle, and he slides behind both the guard and the center and is just waiting there like a running back to pick him up. Hell, Purdue even used him in some fullback stuff at times as a surge blocker. In the run game, again, he plays aggressive. Again, he's not the strongest guy in the world, but I think he's good in the run game. He gets off the ball quickly to pounce D linemen and torque them. He's got flexible hips that allow him to roll through blocks and shift his weight where D linemen are going. Now, he gets into a wrestling mess with some defensive linemen. They're able to wrestle off him in those close spaces, and the stronger guys can get him. But you can use him in the outside zone, pull. There's so much that he does well that I was willing to bet on him figuring out at some level, Grump. But here's the crazy thing. They got him in the 5th round. So forget all of that stuff we talked about him in the 3rd round or the 4th round and what they expect. Like now we got him at pick in the 5th round at pick 154. So it's like if he turns into a swing tackle, it's a good pick. If we get through 4 years and then re-sign him, like that's a good pick if he just becomes a swing tackle. But I think the realistic ceiling is much higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ideal situation for the Giants to pan out is that he eventually becomes the starting right tackle. You hope next year. These are lofty expectations, but I'm saying ideal, right? Optimal situation is that this O line next year has him penciled in as a starter at right tackle, and hopefully you have Evan Neal penciled in at right guard, and he's some kind of success there. That would be super ideal, but um there are strength questions with Marcus Mbow, but I think that they can be cleaned up, right? Like if you have like a certain limitation, like with him, it's length and strength. And I don't think that the strength is going to get all that much better over time. You have to be able to make up with something else, right? And he can definitely compensate with, like you said, his IQ and with his athleticism, right? Because he's able to see things quickly and react to them quickly. As long as he knows exactly how to put his body in the best position to succeed, the strength won't really matter. It won't matter for long enough, for often enough for him to be a bad tackle. So really, it's up to him to refine all of those mechanical things, because like there's even things with strength in the run game, right? Like in operating a trap, it's not like he does a bad job, right? He comes flying across the line of scrimmage and slam into somebody, but that's it. Like he just whacks it. Like there's no, if the leverage is cleaned up just a little bit more and there's leg drive, like he could be a plus run blocker with his athleticism. He moves to the second level so well. Out in the open field, he looks really, really fluid as well. He does need to line up his blocks in the open field a little bit better, but um his ability to handle twitchy uh edge rushers, as a defensive lineman in general, right? The twitchy guys, as long as he doesn't overreact to the twitchiness and is patient, I think that he's going to be just fine. The IQ and the athleticism will make up for a lot.
Yeah, and I want to just kind of read through my notes on him. A versatile, quick offensive lineman who can play all 5 spots. Very fleet-footed, allowing him to do different things. Really struggles with power, whether momentum or through the point of contact. Soft shoulder and gives up ground versus speed to power. Footwork is very good. Mirrors laterally extremely well. Recovers well to slide in front of rusher. Loves to work jump sets and closes space in a hurry. Jump sets versus speed can leave him behind. What I mean by that is if you throw a jump set at a guy who's screaming off the line of scrimmage and timing it up, you're going to be behind. Throws out different pass sets to keep the rusher off time. Pass sets are always smooth with his feet. Uses independent hands and replaces really well. Will use hand tricks to get rushers timing off. IDs, blitzes, and stunts extremely well. Gets off the ball quickly to pounce D linemen and torque. Flexible hips that allow him to roll into blocks. Flexible hips allow him to shift weight where defensive lineman is going. Defensive line able to wrestle off him in closed spaces. Strong D lineman will shed. Good mover to consistently be used in wide zone. Will use slingshot on the backside of zone. Good puller and mover in space to get to spots, although struggles at the point of contact. Again, I had him as a low second rounder. Like I think there's just so much talent there. Again, it reminded me of a similar player, Zach Tom a few years ago, who was the guy I really wanted for the Giants, who's a good player for the Packers. And the thing with Zach Tom was people really didn't know what position he would play because he had this good tackle film. You remember doing well versus Jermaine Johnson in that class and other guys. Um, and he fell to pick 140. And well, Grumpy's a 5th round pick. Like we talked about him in our O-line preview. Well, I pick him at pick 65 or 99, and in that context, and the struggles are a little more worse from there. Well, the Giants come at 154. So I think with him, the risk is so low. Try different things. Like I don't like the musical chairs treatment they give some of these offensive linemen. Like Josh Azuda should have never gotten tackle snaps. It should have always been playing guard or whatever. But, and when the Giants are moving Evan Neal to guard, they should not give him tackle reps. It's done there. Let him only play guard. But with Mbow, let him try stuff, right? Until you figure out where his best spot is. And it seems like they're going to start him out of tackle, and hopefully I think they're hoping that he's the Jermaine Illuminor replacement next year. We'll see how much playing time he gets this year, if any at all. But I was in love with this pick. I I think he's gonna be a pretty good player. Again, the strength holds him back from being this guy who I'm saying is this star or whatever. But I just think there's too many good things for him to just be a bad player in the NFL.
I mean, personally, I would hold off on the moving him to the inside kind of thing. He was introduced at the draft as a guard, or at least it was written as a guard on my screen. Watching it,
Dable said they're going to try him a tackle first.
Yeah, but I mean, if I know a Brian Dable training camp, I think I'll see him at like all 5 positions or something like that. The way they do that stuff, that's fine if you want to try him out. But just in general, I think you're limiting what he does best in his athleticism and his lateral movement by moving him inside, and you're highlighting the thing that he does worst, which is head-to-head strength. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
move inside. I don't agree with it. I think there's so little that needs to be refined for him to play on the outside. That I think that he's probably athletic enough where you can train him at left and right tackle. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably, if you want to experiment, I would experiment with that shit, because I don't think that he needs to play whatsoever unless there's an injury this year. And even then, you pay money to James Hudson. I think he should be probably the fourth tackle. Let him learn and develop a little bit. Because there's he's not better than the starting two tackles anyway. So.
Well, no. Yeah, I would try him at tackle one because he's, like you said, he's not the better. And then if Thomas goes down, they give maybe you said James Hudson. I think he may be a better option than James Hudson off rip. But if it doesn't work, then it's always easier to move him to guard after it doesn't work there. And like you said, I do have, like, if his strength is his biggest issue, moving him to guard doesn't fix that. But it also can take away some of the momentum stuff, like, the speed to power stuff. You're not getting those same types of reps. And he's able, like, you think his foot speed is good at tackle. He's going to be able to stay in front of every defensive tackle, defensive tackle compared to edge rushers. And again, he can get stronger. I don't think he's never going to be a strength for him, no pun intended, but we'll see. But I love this pick. Like I said at the top, I went over the consensus big boards, not the consensus mock drafts, because I'm scrolling all the way up on my 15-page note document. He was 64. I mean, he was consensus wise, he was the third highest player in this draft. He was higher than Darius Alexander and Skattebo, and certainly Korie Black. Anything else on Marcus Mbow before we get into the 7th round and really break down these cats?
No, I think my last note is just to piggyback off of what you're saying about the value here. I mentioned off the rip here that trading up for Jaxson Dart made them make sacrifices in this draft, right? So they had to figure out if they were going to go defensive line or offensive line to attack the trenches, right? Because right guard is a spot, interior offensive line is a spot, and tackle is certainly a spot that they need to figure something out. They needed to walk away from this draft with some help on the offensive line, and making that trade took one more swipe away, and a lot of offensive linemen went off the board. A lot of really, really good offensive linemen went off the board. So getting Marcus Mbow here in the 5th round, where we're saying, like, the trajectory is to potentially be a right tackle, maybe even as early as next year, to get him in the 5th round at 154. I mean, this is the draft falling exactly the way you would hope that it would go when you have to make those sacrifices.
I want to look something up because I want to see some information, because I actually think, we talk about, like, you just mentioned the sacrifice. I'm going to pull up the picks between 99 and 105, which is the pick they traded away, and their pick that they had, where they picked Skattebo. So Charles Grant, Upson Stout, Savion Jones, Ty Felton. They definitely weren't taking Ty Felton there. Chimere Dike from Florida, and then Bishel Tutin out of Virginia Tech. They weren't taking him. The only guy who I maybe question there is if they really like that Charles Grant guy out of William and Mary, who I didn't watch. But I legitimately think that they would have went Skattebo at 99 and Mbow at pick 105.
No, I don't mean the pick that they sacrificed, the pick that they moved from at 34. Choosing a quarterback over 34.
Right. Okay.
But because that's what I was saying. Like, giving up 99 means nothing when you hold 105. That's what I was saying.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the 7th round. This is where we make our money. In round 7, pick 219, the Giants selected Nebraska tight end Thomas Fidone, and it is Fidone. That's how you pronounce it. It's not Fidone like we first thought. If you haven't heard, he was ranked number 1 tight end in high school rankings over Brock Bowers. Then he tore his ACL in April 21 in spring ball, and then he retore his ACL in March 2022. And then he had 630 yards over the last 2 years. Grump, he's got straight line speed and size, right? He's 6'5", 243, doesn't have mass, but he has length and 34-inch arms. He tested really well at the combine. In fact, that relative athletic score that I think is a little overrated. He had a 9.49, which is 69th of all tight ends since like 1985. Now I don't think that's really telling the truth on him as a player. But what he does have is he has straight line speed and the length to make some tough grabs. Like, but the thing is I think he understands route running and stuff, but he just doesn't have like that shake to it, right? He's very like up and down and straight line, even though he knows he's not like, there's some tight ends who you watch them, it's like you could be a good route runner, but you just don't know what you're doing. That's not Fidone. It's just he doesn't have that shake to him to get that separation. And I actually legit like his blocking, especially as a pass blocker and in space. He's not an ass kicker in space, but he knows he gets there. He gets to the spot that he needs to. In line in college, I thought his film was actually really good, but I could see how in the NFL, the ends will squeeze him down. I remember the Ohio State edge, JT Tuamalo or whatever his name was able to squeeze him down. Not like ass kicker, but able to squeeze him down. But he just doesn't have the size, the mass to be this great inline blocker. What do you think of Thomas Fidone?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot to like, right? I have the note that he's faster than he is quick, right? So he does. Here's a couple of things that make him unique, right? He lines up all over the place. They had him lined up in the slot. They had him lined up in inline Y tight end, in an H-back spot behind the line of scrimmage. So they line him up everywhere. He can do everything pretty well, right? As a blocker, I think that he squares up nicely, but he does get hands in his chest. The pad level is sometimes too high, and that throws his anchor off balance. But it's one of those things. Like if the pad level is a little bit lower, it makes up for a lot of the lack of strength. It clears up a lot of the balance issues, and the strength needs to get stronger. Like, he just needs to get stronger. It's average. And where I think it kind of suffers, that it can immediately get better is in the initial pop. Like that first pop can be stronger. He squares up good. Like he's all lined up. It's just throw a little bit more oomph into that first one. The lower half of the body, to be functional, he needs to add a little bit of strength there. But in terms of being faster than he is quick, like the straight line speed, like you said, it's good. He runs a variety of routes, and he's sudden in and out of the breaks, but he's not explosive in and out of the breaks. You know what I mean? Like he wants to move quickly. The feet don't really cooperate with cut on a dime and move. There's a lot of wasted steps at the top of the route, right? In and out of breaks, like the suddenness is there, but the explosion isn't there because the feet need to be cleaned up. And I don't even know how much that can be cleaned up. And
he's a 7th round pick, so we're not sitting here being like, what, like.
But there are other traits, you know what I mean? Like it's okay that I don't think that Brian Daboll is going to make him run such crazy, ridiculous routes, but he's got 34-inch arms. He's 6'5", and he's really, really good at like extending at the catch point and reeling in tough catches. I think that's really the bread and butter. He doesn't need to be sudden in and out of breaks, I don't think, in the offense, in the vision of this team. I don't know that he's ever going to become anything, a 7th round pick, whatever, but I don't think that they're going to be asking him to be running complicated routes out of the slot where he's going to need to be beating some slot corner or anything like that.
Well, here's the thing I'll say too is like every draft pick ever, it's like, what does this mean? What does this mean for this player? Like people ask, what does this mean for Bellinger? But in reality, what I think it means is that if there will be a different tight end 3 if someone gets hurt. I think what it means is they actually, which I'm proud of them, took their best player available instead of worrying about what it means for Chris Manhertz or Daniel Bellinger and hoping, it means they're hoping a player with a good pedigree can bounce back after having these ACL injuries. I think that's what it means. And I'll read my write-up on him. Good long speed contest seams. He had 373 yards and 0 touchdowns last year on 36 catches. Doesn't have quickness, needs to be good and quick. Doesn't have quickness needed to be good in quick routes. Lacks strength and frame to be a do-it-all tight end. Releases have a hitch in them. Takes some time. Runs straight up and down, very leggy. Lots of slow down at the stem of the route. Uses cell and foot jabs. Understands route running, but lacks the shake to operate it. Full speed transitions allow him to separate. So when it's like a corner, when it's not a squared off route or like someone coming back to the ball. Snapping his breaks. Gets rerouted easily. Long arms and snags the ball away from his frame. Good hands, very low drop rate. Can contort his body fairly well, but not going to be a leaper. Not a yak threat unless he's hit in stride down the field. So there is like, something like that Indiana game. He had like a 20-yard like yak play, but he's got to be at full speed and hit in stride. Good blocking technique in line and has aggression. Strong hands and strength. Can get squeezed down as a blocker. Good move blocker in sense of getting to block, but doesn't have pop. And can legitimately pass block. So if I was making a ranking of like rank which players from this draft class contribute, Fidone would be last for me. In fact, Korie Black, who we're going to talk about next, I think is a better overall player than Fidone. But again, we're talking about a 7th round pick who, big high school recruit who's got size, maybe turns into something, maybe he doesn't.
Yeah, I think you're betting on upside with Fidone, and that's really it. One note I had is that he has really surprising body control, especially at the catch point, which I think is above average.
Yeah, I have the same. Can contort his body well, but not gonna leap. Like he's not the guy who like turns his body and explodes off the ground. But like if a ball's thrown behind him, he does really well to get it, to turn around and catch that ball. And there was a couple plays I watched in the Ohio State and Indiana game where he made plays like he didn't have a ton of catches, so there's not gonna be a ton of examples, but there was examples of that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think he's going to be the last contributor or the least likely to contribute from this draft class. I do actually like Korie Black, the pick 246 at Oklahoma.
Let's talk about him because I'm actually legitimately a little bit excited to talk about
Me too.
Round 7, pick 246 from the Bills. This comes back from the Boogie Basham trade, which we talked about. The Boogie Basham trade was as low risk a possible a trade, and yet the highest risk realized. Boogie Basham did nothing. You gave up the first pick in the 6th round, and the Bills had like the 3rd worst regular non-comp 7th round pick that you got back. Oklahoma State cornerback Korie Black, he'll be 23 when the season starts. Ran a 4.35 40 and a 39-inch vertical with good size and good arm length. He's 6 foot, 192 pounds, and he has 32-inch arms. And it's not just testing with Korie Black, right? Like, Thomas Fidone, his testing's great. You watch him play, you're like, this is not the 69th most athletic tight end to come out of the NFL draft. Black is a legitimate athlete. He's fast to run with anyone. He has great change of direction. He pounces out his back pedal and closes in. We'll talk about the negatives with him because there is a legitimate reason he's here in the 7th round. But listen to this. In this draft class of corners who were drafted, 9 pass breakups. That was the 2nd most for corners in this class, only to Trey Amos. 13 forced incompletions was tied for the most with Trey Amos. And his forced incompletion rate of 23% was only behind Trey Amos, Jason Marshall, and Darian Porter, who gave up like 5 catches on the entire year. We'll talk about these negatives, but like it is legitimate film and testing athleticism. And when his eyes are forward, you see good instincts there. And you had to take pre-show that got me pretty fired up.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that I noticed right away, so I think that 4.35 40 speed is from his pro day, correct? I don't believe
4.35 is from the combine, but that's all he did. The vertical I have is from his pro day.
Oh, I didn't realize that he ran at the combine. It's not up on NFL.com, but that's okay.
It is. That's the only place I look for combine stuff.
Oh, all right, but then I just missed it. Doesn't matter. But at 6
Let me make
feet,
sure.
At 6 feet, 190 pounds, having elite speed like that is a huge asset.
You're right. I lied. I'm a liar.
Okay. All right. Well, naughty. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, whatever. You take pro day speeds with a grain of salt, but it's elite speed. You know what I mean? If it's off and it's 4.4 flat, that's still elite speed at 6 feet and 190 pounds. He does have a good ability to mirror wide receivers in off man coverage. But one of the things is that he's just not physical along the route. He doesn't disrupt along the route. He doesn't run stride for stride right up for people. He doesn't press up. He's just not super physical along the route. So what happens is he allows a lot of catches, right? With back shoulder, stop routes. He's just too far off, and he has really good closing speed, but it's not good enough for someone who has a free release and is able to run freely along the route. You know what I mean? If you're not frustrating them, then you're not screwing up the route enough. But where I think he's actually going to fit, because one thing I noticed is that he's kind of lined up a little bit all over the place at Oklahoma State. And then you just see the closing speed, you see the speed, you see the size, you see the way he's a willing tackler who squares up. The strength is a little average because he dips his head. You know what I mean? He squares up correctly, and then he doesn't have like a clean 100% accurate hit on the guy because he's looking at the ground like a dummy. He just needs to keep his head up, and he's physical enough and fast enough to lay big hits. I think that he could transition to safety pretty well. Safety, a dime corner, something like that, where he can kind of excel and use his speed and, like you said, like face the quarterback, face the play, and close on it. I think that's where he'll excel.
Yeah, that's when he is at his best. So, like I said, there's a reason why he ran the 7th round. There's a reason why I had him as a 6th rounder, and I'll read my notes, and that'll say, athletic cornerback who has chops but needs to clean up so much. Speed is great, can run with anyone. Good change of direction and pounce out of his back pedal. Closes in on quick routes. Jams don't land. Bites at foot jabs and shoulder fakes too easily, right? And that's why he gives up these big plays. Gives up leverage way too early versus off coverage. No patience in off coverage at all. Plays in phase well, knows how to trail. Overextends in man, so will lose on subtle breaks. Doesn't get his head turned around, if not in a great spot. Good ball skills to poke the ball when eyes are forward. Eyes get stuck on wide receiver on the vertical plane and doesn't close the space needed. Not strong. Push-offs worked on him way too often. And again, I had him as a 6th round pick. But again, like, that athleticism cannot be coached. And there's issues, but I just read you off those numbers where, clean it up a little bit, man. Just clean it up a little bit. Again, not, second most pass breakups in the class, tied for the most forced incompletions, 4th and forced incompletion rate. Like I said, all that stuff, he's not patient off coverage. He falls for any type of nuance from a wide receiver. So if he plays this year or even next year, he's going to suck. And he's the last pick in this class. So I don't want to get too jazzed up, but I think something I have a habit of doing, which I will always do, is I get excited of talking about him in the context of he was picked at 246. If we took this guy in the 4th round, I would be like, this is a really bad pick from Joe Schoen. But it's in the context of 246, I love this pick.
Well, here's what you can get excited for, right? Obviously, he shouldn't be playing at all on defense year 1, and if he is, horrible things are happening, and horrible things are going to continue to happen if he does. But here's some things where he needs to clean up, right? Or things that are going to make you fired up. If he can get a little bit better as a tackler and really put on display his speed and his physicality in special teams. Year 1, I think you have a gunner right there. And if disrupting guys all along that punt or whatever, hand fighting, getting physicality there, using that speed to get downfield, and just laying a huge tackle on special teams, I guarantee you don't care about special teams at all, but you'll get excited for the possibilities of him transitioning to safety when he just gets better at playing defense. That's what you can look for year 1.
Yeah. Grunt, we just finished a draft recap.
What else were we going to do? You and I, we could have probably sat down and just went right into this last night. We just wanted to do all the extra film work.
Well, I had to do I had to get my Thomas Fidone write-up. And so.
But that's the thing, was we kind of had write-ups on all of these guys already.
So I will say, this portion of this show every year is actually I get emotional, not actually crying, but it's a weird feeling. You put in so much, the season ends and it's all right, let's get into draft stuff. And no matter what's going on in that off season, you're still always getting ready for the draft. And we try to have fun with it and also be legitimately good at it. You're right. Like you said, we had 6 of the 7 picks we had write-ups on, which, you had some stuff going on. I got married. I had to, I quit my job and started this afresh. I was so I was so stressed out about not being prepared for this draft, which it was the least prepared I've ever been for a draft. But luckily, the Giants only take top 30 visits, and I got all the top 30 visits write-ups on. But it's been really cool to see this month overall the support, right? You know, whether it's from Pick Pool or Body Armor or the Sussex County Miners for stepping up to the plate. From the, thank you, like Danny King. You know, Danny King's been with me since 2019. He's got his own life. He lives on the West Coast working for TMZ, yet he still shows up for the draft streams every year. And Grump, I do want to say thank you. I mean, people have really enjoyed your presence on the show. We still have the UDFA pods, and you'll be a frequent part of the show as I figure it out over the summer. But 17 hours streaming, up all night doing film breakdowns, and then it's just all over. So I always get a little bit like sad when it's all over because it's a very weird feeling.
I had a good time. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate everybody being so nice, especially since I say so many stupid things. 17 hours of streaming, you're bound to slip up, say something silly, be half asleep the whole time. But we had a lot of fun. You know what I mean? It genuinely felt like we were all just kind of hanging out and having a good time. It didn't really feel like work, even though it's work. So happy to be here, happy to help.
Yeah, I mean the streams are so much fun. I mean, I watched like some other streams while I'm like working on film breakdowns, and I was like, dude, like, and maybe it's because they're like full NFL ones and they have to give like calm, cool, collected takes on every pick. But I'm like, man, we just have like way more fun with it. But again, the support has been unreal this whole month and especially this weekend. So legitimate thank you to all the listeners. You stick with us through the summer. We're going to have a lot of cool content, interviews, and all types of things of listening. And if you're just like, hey, I'm here for the draft recap, I'll see you in training camp for week 1. Support the Patreon, right? Well, we didn't do names on this one because it's the episode we got to get right into, but the Patreon is what makes this show go. And if you're listening to the end of the show, I hope that you want to keep this show going. So it's patreon.com/GiantsNation. If you could support, it would mean a lot. But Grump, thank you. The listeners, thank you. Danny King, thank you. Body Armor, Sussex County Miners, and Pick Pool, thank you. But we're not done yet, Grump. I mean, we do have our Thursday. We got offensive UDFA review. Next Monday, defensive UDFA review. So the film grind is only getting started. We will see you when we see you. Time to close out the 2025 draft guide. Time to slap the coconut one more time. Until then, let's go Big Blue.